Alright, we're back. So this week we're going to do something a little bit different and something a little ironic actually. So I've been playing Lost Ark since launch, so it's been over 2 years. And I reflected back kind of about my experience and just kind of how things have been going, what's been good and what's been bad. And then I asked myself a question. The question being, if I could change one thing about Lost Ark's design, what would it be? The irony comes in the fact that AGS put out a survey the other day, and this is the final question basically. But this is a really good question in my opinion, because this way you talk about things in a more positive light instead of saying, hey man, what do you hate about Lost Ark? What do you not like? I had to give myself a couple rules of things that I couldn't just default to. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of things that are easy go-tos. We could talk about RMT, cheating, and kind of just overall punishment for bad actors, but I think a big one is also going to be monetization. Along with just the overall RNG and just how there's so much of it and it's just getting worse and worse. So I thought about it for a bit and the answer came pretty obvious what I thought. And that is to make it easier to main swap or roster swap, just swapping out a character for another one, because let's be honest, this game makes a lot of great characters, but they also make it really awful to put that character in your roster. A lot of people do switch out their characters, they do switch out their roster, they do switch mains. Not only am I not an exception to this, but also I'm probably one of the more egregious ones. I have abandoned a lot of characters at pretty high item levels, at least for their time. Because the reason why I have so many characters at like 1516, 5080, some at 1600, 1610, whatever, is because they were a roster character and then I decided I wanted to go a different direction. If I wouldn't have made all these roster changes and I would have just stuck with the same characters throughout the entire duration of these 2 years, I know the overall power and progress of my roster would be leaps and bounds stronger than what my roster currently is. I probably would have went for Daemite hard mode. I probably would have a lot of level 10s, probably full level 10s on my main and probably also some level 10s too. But instead, all that gold went into honing these 1610s, 1600s, 1580s, so on and so forth. And to make this kind of roster change, it's really painful, especially this late into the game. Because not only are you just kind of throwing aside all the progression you made on this character, but also then you got to consider all the costs it's going to take for this other character to kind of take its spot. And I know you can say that, hey, well, this character does a high level chaos, it can do higher level guardians, at least it does have value that way. Which is true, it does soften the blow. So I want to go a little deeper and talk about how this could be tackled, but also show how other developers solve this problem. So a class change ticket. This is something that people often come to the conclusion of this would be how they would solve it. While being the most obvious solution, I don't think it's really a bad idea. Because let's be honest, this game is designed around its monetization. Create problems so you can sell a solution. And to juice up a new character, they're hoping, even with all the events and stuff, that you're gonna be, putting a little money into it. And that's why I think this is the most feasible option. Because unlike the following options, you're gonna be able to still monetize this. But it's pretty simple, pay money, change class. Then after that, all you really do is buy new accessories for your engravings, and that's it. I am adding an additional section here in post. And the reason is because Miso released this video. Now the reason why I want to bring this up is because one of the topics in there was that he thought it was a bad idea because of synergies. I disagree with him, respectfully, and this is why. If being a high damage class chasing MP is how you have fun, that's how you should play the game. The issue of synergies is more of a symptom. The disease itself is the balance in game design. It is up to the developers to make the classes desirable to play outside of the synergy. It should not be up to the players to find a solution for something that the developers made a problem. So while I do agree synergies are important, I disagree with them being a reason to hold back something like a class change ticket. So I want to talk about a system in another game that does really well in this regard. Like, it is the best way to handle all this, which is just having all your classes as jobs and allowing you to freely change between them. You can see this kind of system in Final Fantasy XIV and also Phantasy Star games now. And the reason why this will never fully happen in Lost Ark is because this game has gender locks, it has racial locks, which I guess you could just call it class locks for the base class. They're not going to go through and make all the animations and everything for like a Delane and an Assassin to do all the things that a Slayer can do or anything like that. I just can't imagine them changing up every race to be able to do every class. As hilarious as it would be to have the Sushire male actually do like the artist animations, like imagine that big dude doing Starry Night. Like they feasibly could do it because chances are all these are just preset animations, they all have the same rig, so you could apply it to all of them, but they'd have to do adjustments for like things like clipping. But just like my example of the Sushire male doing the Starry Night animation, they would probably not let animations fly and they'd have to redo some of them. But a partial compromise to this: when you create a character, let it just be an assassin, allowing that one character to be able to swap between all four of the assassin and advanced classes they have. But again, this is only a partial solution. Gunslinger, Slayer, they got nothing to switch to. And there's also another big reason, which we'll get to later. Now obviously Lost Ark will never have a job system. This one will never happen. But regardless, I wanted to glaze the system a little bit because I do love job systems in games. Because it just gives you so much freedom and flexibility that you just can't not love it. And the other method is going to be another example from another game as well, which is the BDO tag system. So how this works is you have your main and you can tag another character with this main. These two characters now share their gear together, and they also share their position in the world, which doesn't really matter for the Lost Ark. There is a little bit more caveats to it, but that's overall the high concept of it. So imagine when Breaker came out, you got sick of your striker, you're like, this class stinks, I want to switch. But to drop this 1620 is painful. You tag that Breaker with your striker, and now they're sharing gear. So now that Breaker is effectively 1620, but he does have to buy accessories, and he's gonna probably have to level up, which we're just gonna leave the leveling system alone for this video. I don't like it, but we're not gonna talk about it. But overall, this is a very painless transition to make a character into a roster character, and I think this would be great. Now obviously there would have to be tweaks and things to make it less abusable, like tag characters could only share the same raid lockout, so you just can't overly abuse it, and they'd have to be like locked in for the week, kind of like a gold earner. But in theory, this would keep all your progress and investment into basically 6 character slots. So there is one thing I haven't talked about yet. There is another problem that I kind of want to solve with the same solution, and that is this game's lack of flexibility to play with your friends. Maybe you have a static with a bunch of apes and you don't have enough supports to support all your runs together. You guys can't play together. Or maybe in some weird universe you have too many support friends. The class change ticket can semi-solve this, because then you can just change to whatever class you want, but then you're locked in until you buy another ticket. While the job system, yes, would be able to solve this, let's be honest, this is the least likely scenario. And even if they did the latter example I laid out of having an assassin be able to access all 4 advanced classes, that wouldn't completely solve the issue, because that assassin couldn't run any support classes because they don't have a support assassin. While with the tag system, you can be like, yeah guys, I'll just play X for a while, or maybe you have too many of the same class and you're like, man, I'll switch for synergies for a while. You wouldn't be able to change on the fly, unfortunately, since there is gold lockouts that you have to abide by, but it would still be a good solution. But ultimately the job system would still be the greatest, but let's be honest, again, it's not going to happen. The thing about Lost Ark is they make really good classes. These are fun classes, and that's why so many people have this situation of swapping out mains, swapping out alts. And sure, you could say it's flavor of the month new class, people do it all the time, but I think that with any of these 3 systems, any of these 3 concepts, to be able to really just focus and push everything all towards 6 character slots, it would actually alleviate some of the problems we hear from people about overall progression. If you look at my roster again as an example, I wasted a lot of gold on pushing 1580s and 1610s on just characters that I don't roster anymore. Instead of abandoning those characters, had I tagged them to a newer character, the character I swapped them out with, I would have saved all that gold, time, and progression of getting that character to 1610 to replace a 1610. Instead, all that gold would have been able to go towards getting to 1620 or buying gems. I would have wasted a lot less gold and my roster would be more progressed, and I can say this with a lot of confidence that there are other people like this as well. In the comments on my last video, for example, there's a guy who really wants to drop his 1640 Soul Fist to main a Soul Leader. That is a lot of gold that you invest into a character that he's going to have to just demote it down to an alt. A very, very expensive alt. But what I'm getting at here is I think that this kind of system would allow people to feel a little less pressured to this feeling that a lot of people have, that they have to play, that they have to do so much homework. Which one of these days I'll fully address the topic of that term. But ultimately, I think this would change how people feel about the overall progression of Lost Ark. I think there would be less FOMO and even less burnout, because this would alleviate some of the pressure on a lot of people, because a lot of people do switch characters. But to sum it up, I think that a class change ticket or the BDO tag system or something like that is something that is actually feasible to be added retroactively to this game. Unfortunately, a job system is just too different from the game's overall design. You got my answer, but now I want to hear yours. Let me know what you would change about Lost Ark if you could. I stayed away from the obvious topics like RMT, cheating, RNG, and monetization, even though this is kind of monetization. But if you feel that strongly about any of those topics, then yeah, just let that be your reason. And if you haven't taken the survey from AGS, do it. I'll link that down below. Hopefully that's still active by the time I post this. But that'll be it for this video. Like, sub, thanks for watching, I'll catch you next time.